So Bayonetta 3, we're finally here. I remember 4 years ago when Nintendo and Platinum dropped the teaser trailer, and man was I excited. There is no question I'm a huge Bayonetta fan. I said multiple times on the channel that the second entry is one of my favorite games of all time. The frantic, fast-paced action, the over-the-top dramatic boss fights, the amazing music, and a protagonist that just drips in personality. A perfect formula for an awesome series if you ask me. So after years and years of waiting, we finally have the third entry of the series, and of course, like most modern games today, there was controversy surrounding the release of the game with the original voice actress and all the fake outrage on Twitter. Look, I don't even care to talk about it on my channel, but if you're curious, I did link an article down in the description if you want to read up on it, but without further ado, let's jump into it. So starting off with this game's story, since this game is still very new during the recording and release of this review, I would try to make it as brief as possible. However, for some points in the review, I will be using late game footage, so if you're watching this, that could be seen as a spoiler, so just giving you guys a heads up. Bayonetta 3 starts off very similar to the second game, with Bayonetta and Enzo walking around New York City, and of course, all hell breaks loose and we have to spring into action to stop whatever's going on. Notice I said this game's Bayonetta, because like many media properties today, this story is dealing with multiple universes and a biomutant-like threat that wants to rip these universes apart. Now, it's up to Bayonetta or Bayonettas to put a stop to this from happening, and that's pretty much the motivation behind why we're doing what we do. That is just a surface level plot summary, and honestly, not even the bulk of what happens here. Again, due to spoilers, I won't go too in depth, but personally speaking, I really enjoyed the story most out of the trilogy. I felt it was easier to follow and I was engaged most of the time. Was it perfect? Absolutely not, but I liked it for the most part. In terms of the characters, we have Bayonetta or Cereza and her mini variants, Jean, Enzo with a fresh outfit, Rodin who is also rocking a fresh fit, and our new character Viola, who is a sword-wielding punk rocker chick with this in-your-face attitude. The voice acting is good, and honestly, I didn't mind Bayonetta's new voice at all. To be honest, it was fine. Viola's voice acting was decent, but I was annoyed at certain parts. But again, that's just her character arc, so hey, I'll deal with it. So moving on to the presentation, Bayonetta 3 is rocking a brand new art style and direction, and for a game that's on a Nintendo Switch, it looks great. Bayonetta has always been one of the better looking games next to Xenoblade and Monster Hunter, so I'm not surprised at all that Platinum was able to work their magic here. In terms of resolution, the game is reported to run at a native 810p, which I assume is upscale based on the display you're playing it on while docked, with a frame rate that targets 60 FPS during combat and 30 in other spots. Now, to be completely honest with you guys, when it comes to most games, I don't really think about resolution while playing it as long as I'm having fun, and Bayonetta 3, I did notice some frame drops here and there, but nothing game breaking or too distracting, so if you're worried about performance, trust me, this game is fine. Now, I can't say I had any issues. I have yet to play the game in portable mode, so I can't really speak to it in that regard, so if you did play it in portable mode, let me know in the comments down below. Like I stated in the first impressions video, the game is more open than previous entries. The game is still linear in a sense where it pushes you in one direction to reach the next cutscene or boss fight, but there is plenty of open area for you to explore, and given how many collectibles there are in this game, it's in your best interest to do so. The areas themselves are also really nice to look at, and I had fun exploring all the hidden areas to find little goodies here and there, so yeah, explore these stages. Now the music. This soundtrack is easily one of the best ones in the Bayonetta trilogy. Tracks like Moonlight Serenade, Ghost, Whispers of Destiny, all amazing tracks. At the time of this recording, Bayonetta 3 soundtrack has not hit streaming services just yet, but when it does, best believe I'll be adding most of it to my gaming OST playlist. Bayonetta as a whole always had good music, but the music this time around is really good, y'all. Now moving on to the gameplay, where do we even start? Okay, with Bayonetta. If you play any of the entries before this, you know what to expect. Fast-paced punches and kicks, crazy torture and climax attacks, various of weapons, and my favorite, witch time. Now this time around, Platinum has added way more depth to the already fun combat system, and now you can summon your demon buddies to fight alongside you to add even more depth. As you progress through the story, you unlock more demons to use, and each of them will have their own characteristics and mechanics. For example, the spider demon can climb up walls and use its webs to trap enemies. The train demon can wreak havoc all over the field, and Madame Butterfly, my favorite, is just a larger version of Bayonetta and can really wreak some damage on larger enemies. I can't help but to think that this mechanic was influenced by Astral Chain, another Platinum Switch exclusive, because in that game you can also control yourself and your Legion to take down enemies. Now with all this chaos going on during these battles, the only issue I had was sometimes I would lose myself with the character placement with all the madness going on. Not that's a huge issue, but the combat can sometimes feel a little too over the top in some battles. I also didn't care for the Giga battles. I felt the demons move a bit too slow for my liking, and I know that's a crazy complaint, but I can live without it. Now, those scenes where you're riding the monsters down the buildings and all, that is wild, but yet it's super fun. Bayonetta also has many weapons you can use as you progress through the story. Now, my main weapon that I used for the entire playthrough was Color My World, which is the default weapon, but I felt that's all that I needed. But I did find favorites post-game with weapons like G-Pillar, the Yo-Yo, and I also like Love is Blue, which gives Bayonetta her Bayonetta 2 moveset. These weapons also alters Bayonetta's traversal options as well, so the game really encourages the player to switch up the weapons they use often, and I encourage the same thing. There's also a skill tree this time around that will allow you to upgrade and expand Bayo's skills and use the in-game currency, so yeah. Now yes, you do play as Bayonetta throughout most of the game, but you also share the spotlight with Viola, who has dedicated chapters. Now Viola's biggest thing is swordplay, and she feels very similar to a Devil May Cry character in my opinion. Her moveset is different than Bayonetta's, and instead of dodging to activate Witch Time, you have to block at the very right second, which took some getting used to, but I liked it. Viola can also summon her Demon Cat Treasure to join in on the action, so yeah, I love how the game switches up the gameplay to prevent it from feeling repetitive. That's a plus. Now, speaking of that, the game does a lot to switch up the gameplay. Everything from demon riding, on-rail shooting, a freaking rhythm game as a boss fight, and so much more. Some might say this causes the game to lose overall focus, but I could definitely see that being a complaint for some players. But for me, it was fine. I will say, since the game has so much packed into it, I probably won't replay this game anytime soon on a repeat playthrough, but I had a great time. The only thing I was kind of meh about was the genre stealth sections. I thought they were okay, but I wish they were not mandatory to get back into the main action. Overall, what can we say about Bayonetta 3? Great gameplay and improved combat, more focus on exploration, epic boss fights, more gameplay styles, and a killer soundtrack. I would say this game is easily one of the best games you could play on the Nintendo Switch. There's also some pretty cool extras like concept art and extra costumes to check out as well. Now, the game is not perfect. There are some frame rate dips here and there, and the Giga battles are not my favorite. But overall, I think the game is fantastic. I will say, I don't think the game offers much as replayability for me as the second game, but that's just my personal preference. But Bayonetta 3 is definitely one of the games running for best game of the year, and I hope you guys play it and enjoy it like I did. If you enjoyed this review, make sure you guys lock in by hitting that sub button, drop some love in the comment section, and I'll see you guys next time.